accident or injury, call Jacob and Ronnie. Call Jacob.
Hey, it's Mace. If you or a loved one is injured in any kind of accident, please don't wait. Call Jacob immediately for a free consultation. That's right, free. When an accident happens, it can turn your world upside down, so put the best on your side. Jacob doesn't even get paid unless you win. First name, first thought, first call, Jacob, Jacob, Jacob. After an accident, 24 hours a day, call 844-24-JACOB or visit calljacob.com.
Call Jacob.
Welcome to the world of Culture Pop with Steve Mason and Sue Kalinsky. Culture, comedy, movies, TV, tech, authors, trends, pop. This is the Culture Pop Podcast.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Culture Pop Podcast. I am in my kitchen, at my kitchen table, and no Chris Morales, our producer, so we're doing our best on Skype. No Sue Kalinsky, my regular co-host. She's at home. By the way, she's working. She's doing a show for Netflix. It's a cool concept. It's a show where contestants are given the contents of a refrigerator, leftovers, and they're supposed to turn it into a gourmet meal, and then it gets judged by experts. And so Sue's working from her house. She's editing and producing that. She's like an executive producer on that show. So even though we're all shut down in quarantine, Sue is still working away, but we have no way to hook her in for interviews and that kind of stuff. Everybody in the world, it seems like, you want to talk about luck. Netflix drops this Tiger King show at just the exact right moment when all of us are stuck in our houses and sheltering in place and in quarantine. And now it seems like everybody has watched Tiger King. So if you have watched the show, and I think that's most everybody, you'll get this interview. If not, this will make no sense to you whatsoever. But we all know the main characters, Joe Exotic, who has an unpronounceable last name, Carol Baskin. And there was a hit put out on Carol Baskin by Joe Exotic, and that led to Joe Exotic going to jail for at least 22 years. So we tracked down the guy who went to the feds and actually informed on Joe Exotic, which led to his arrest and ultimately his guilty verdict. So his name is James Garretson. You probably remember him. He's known as the guy on the jet ski with the bad haircut. We actually talk about that during this conversation. And joining us right now is James Garretson. So James, you have become almost a household name. What does it feel like to be famous?
I don't think I'm famous. I mean, I don't really, I don't know, it's different. I wouldn't want to be famous, though, that's for sure.
So you owned you kind of started out by owning a strip club in Dallas. How'd you get into that business?
Yeah, actually, I started young and always worked in that industry. And, I had some clubs and then, got out of the industry, maybe like 5 years ago. And at the whole time I've owned wild animals too. So it's a kind of weird mixture.
Sure. What was your first animal?
My first animal was at 17. I bought a lion cub. Right out of the Dallas Morning News. I was a stupid kid, bought a lion cub, didn't know what to do with it, and kind of learned the hard way.
So, like when you get a lion cub, how many pounds is a lion cub when you get it?
The one that I got was probably maybe 15 pounds. She was maybe a month old. Month or two old, and probably 15 pounds, 10, 15 pounds.
What was her name?
Her name was Queenie.
Queenie.
I named her Queenie, yeah.
So
she was a African female lion cub.
So you've got a house, you've got an apartment. Where are you and Queenie living at that point?
Actually, at the time, I was in an apartment. And, I was a young kid, kind of stupid, didn't think the whole thing through, bought a lion cub. And then from that point, I had to find a place to keep her, and I found a place to keep her where I could go out and take care of her and stuff and kind of learn more about them. I just got in over my head.
What do the neighbors say when you walk in with a lion cub?
Oh, yeah, it was pretty crazy. Everybody thought it was cool, but nobody really, thought about, how big this thing was going to get, how dangerous they're going to get, and that's kind of how I got started in the whole business with animals and so on.
So you created 2 wildlife sanctuary kind of places?
Correct.
And where were they?
Yeah, and I had one place in Texas, and then I had another place, in Florida, and then I went back to Oklahoma, and that kind of didn't work out because I got involved in all this Joe Exotic stuff. So, I just basically moved the animals I had left, moved them to, a safe home until, I could figure out where I wanted to be in life, what part of the world, etc.
So at some point you sent at least one cat or maybe multiple cats to Joe Exotic Zoo, right?
Well, no. We had me and my girlfriend at the time basically had a place in Texas. The laws were changing where the counties could either regulate or pass bans. So she actually boarded some animals at Joe Exotic or Joe Schreibvogel. It was Joe Schreibvogel at the time. He didn't have all the husbands and stuff. And so, we met him, and, I met him prior to that also. And so I've known him over a span of 20 to 25 years.
So what did you think of him when you first met him?
When I first met him, he seemed kind of normal. He wasn't like, he was never normal, but he wasn't as crazy as now. He was, I didn't know him to have the multiple husbands. I thought he just had one husband at the time. And he kind of, throughout the years, he got a little bit more crazier and crazier and crazier.
So tell me about this sort of transition he made from Joe, and I can't say his last name, to Joe Exotic. How did that transition happen over the years? How did he change?
Well, what I think is whenever he started, the GW Park, I think he started it with good intentions. And, at one time he probably had to care for animals. He didn't seem like he wasn't as crazy back then. And I think what he did is when he kept breeding and taking in animals, he took so many in that there was no possible way he could sustain them financially. And he just had to go to other methods to raise money to stay afloat. I think he got up to one time like 200 tigers.
Wow.
And so he just started changing, and then started to be more about him than the animals. He wanted to have his picture on all the papers. If you ever heard of a rescue story, he always threw his name in the hat to get his name in the paper. Good or bad, he was all over it.
So I want to ask you something about your cats and owning cats. When they get big, what's it like to be around? Are you nervous? Do you trust them? Do you ever worry that they're gonna, I don't know, I guess maybe snap or forget who you are?
Yeah, they're always wild animals. You can never breed the wild out of them. They all have the instincts. When you're squatting over, when you turn your back on them, they're dangerous animals. There's nothing, you can't fully tame them. That's what you're asking. They're always going to be wild.
So let's go to the saga of Carol Baskin. Do you think, because this is, I do a radio show all week long on ESPN, so I do this podcast on the side. And generally speaking, among my listeners, the general belief is that Carol Baskin did kill her husband and feed her husband to the tigers. What do you think?
I actually don't think she fed her husband to the tigers. There's a lot of suspicions out there and some things that look pretty shady. I think if she had fed him to the tigers, there'd be parts left over, DNA, things like that. I don't think that happened. Who knows? I hear about sardine oil, and it's the first I ever heard about that.
What's the sardine oil thing?
I guess Carol Baskin referenced sardine oil, like rolling somebody in sardine oil so the cats would eat it.
Oh, right. I remember that. Yeah.
So, I don't know. I don't really know what's going on there, but I know there's a lot of things that point in her direction, but, who knows?
Did you ever meet her?
I've met her before. Yeah, I've been to the park before. I went and checked it out.
Yeah. Did you ever meet, I guess it's Doc Antle?
I met him one time, yes.
What's he like?
I don't know. I really haven't spent a lot of time with him. Met him, maybe for a brief 20, 30 minutes.
Because he's got a whole bunch of wives too, right?
That's what I hear, but, then other people tell me, no, it's just all, show. It's strange. Let me tell you, it's strange. I've heard of people going there and getting a job and working for $100 a week and stuff. And I can't really grasp all that. Like, how can you get people to work so cheap?
So,
and
describe what it was like between Joe Exotic and Carol Baskin.
Like their feud?
Yeah, their feud.
Okay, so this is what my opinion. Okay, so Carol Baskin is really outspoken over the cub petting. Okay, and some of it, what she's saying, I understand, and I kind of agree with some of the things. But what I don't understand is that it shouldn't be okay for her to keep cats and not other people.
Right. I never saw the difference between what she was doing and what Joe Exotic was doing.
The only thing Joe Exotic was doing was breeding a lot of cats to do the cubs. That's the only way he could sustain his place financially, is on the babies. But what he didn't realize is every time you breed a cub, you use it for like 10 weeks or 12 weeks or however much time you get out of it. And the government says you can't use it anymore. Then you just throw it in a cage and you're feeding it for 20 years. I don't agree with all that, and he would overload himself. He didn't have enough land. Everything was row after row after row of tigers.
So he kept paying for what he was doing by breeding more cubs.
Yeah, breeding more cubs, selling cubs, giving them away, filling up the sanctuaries like Carol Baskins and all these people that claim they're sanctuaries. So what Joe did is Joe put so many tigers out there in the market that it just basically kind of filled everybody up.
Right.
And I guess he just sent some to Pat. He sent some to Pat Craig, not too long ago, like 49 tigers.
Wow.
And his cages are all steel full. So he was doing a great disservice to the animals. If he would have came up with a better business model where he didn't have to breed, it'd be one thing. But he just got crazier and crazier and crazier and wanted to be a celebrity so bad. It was all about him, not the animal.
So what do you think of the people that work there? Because there's like crazy stuff, like the one that got the arm bit off and then just went to work the next day. Describe sort of what that environment was like inside the zoo.
Well, it was a lot of misfits. It's like you have drunks, alcoholics, meth heads, people that were on the street. But what Joe would do is he would just control these people to the point where they were like zombies. But it was just a big group of misfits. It actually looked like a prison lineup. It was some pretty rough characters. But, that's kind of all you're going to get when you're paying $100 a week or $150 a week. You're not going to get quality help.
So tell me about the plan. Because this is unclear to me exactly how this all went down. You and Alan Grover go to Dallas, right?
No.
Okay, go ahead and set me straight.
Okay, so basically in Alan Glover, I was only on a tail end of Alan Glover.
Okay, Alan Glover, right.
Okay, yeah, there was another hitman that was in the equation. Okay, before that, Joe had asked a lot of people, over time, if they would go kill Carol Baskin. And Joe asked me if I'd kill Carol Baskin or if I knew anybody that would kill Carol Baskin. So Alan Glover was another backup plan. He was, I don't know where he came in the picture. I know he was working at the zoo. I didn't know much about him, but
he was the guy that was Jeff Lowe's friend, right?
Okay, yeah. So what Joe told me is that Alan Glover had already killed somebody because he had the little tattoo on his eye.
Ah, is that what you do after you kill somebody? You get a tattoo on your eye?
Yeah, that little teardrop or whatever.
Yeah.
So that's what Joe thought. So Joe said, well, this guy can do it, and he's going to do it cheap. So Joe didn't want to go with my hitman, which my hitman was actually an FBI agent.
Oh, okay.
So he didn't want to go with Mark, the hitman. So he found Alan Glover and said, hey, Alan Glover's going to do this, and he had a whole plan ironed out. I wasn't there when he ironed out the plot with Alan and all the discussions.
So how did the feds contact you?
Okay, so what happens? A lot of people don't know this, and they didn't put this in the video, I don't think. But what happened is Jeff Lowe was given the park. Jeff Lowe had already owned the park.
Right.
Okay. See, a lot of people think that Jeff Lowe just took the park from Joe. No, that's not the case. Joe and his mother signed the park over to Jeff to stop Carol from taking it. Jeff was out in Las Vegas doing his thing.
Right.
Okay, so the Vegas thing didn't work out, so Jeff Lowe was coming back. Jeff Lowe really didn't want the responsibility of taking that park over because it's lost money for like 10 or 20 years,
Yeah.
The bank account's always negative. Joe was borrowing money from his mother was always writing him $10,000 checks.
And Jeff actually didn't have a lot of money.
Yeah, I mean, he claimed he did, but who knows?
Yeah.
I don't know the whole circumstance. I do know that Jeff came in, paid a lot of the bills that were way past due. I know he did come in and put money in the park. I don't know how much. I wasn't there to the conversation.
Right.
So Jeff Lowe wanted to get away from Joe because Jeff Lowe even told me, hey, Joe's killing animals. He's doing crazy things. He's doing this and that. So they started fighting back and forth. Jeff Lowe wanted to get out of it. Carol was suing Joe and Jeff at this point.
Okay.
As being like an alter ego of Joe. So Jeff Lowe says, hey, I just want to sell the park and get out from underneath it. So what happened is Jeff Lowe talked to me and said, hey, can you reach out to Carol and see if she just wants to buy the place? Jeff Lowe is the actual owner, so he could do it.
Right.
So I called Carol because they were both represented by lawyers, so they couldn't talk to each other without lawyers present. Well, I'm another party, so I called and said, see if she wanted to buy the park. And I called her number, did not leave a message. And then the next day, a U.S. Fish and Wildlife agent calls my phone and pretty much asked me why I'm calling Carol Baskin.
So they were tracking her phone, and you had called, and that's why they called
Correct.
you back.
Yes, because somebody at Joe's place, a female worker that he had there, went to the feds and said, and told the feds that, hey, Joe's trying to find somebody to kill Carol Baskin. So the feds, we didn't go to the feds and snitch this. The feds already knew all this stuff. So they were already squeezing in on Joe. They already knew about the cub trafficking, and then from that point, everybody just started, all Joe's people just started flipping. Like the husband flipped, Jeff Lowe flipped, Eric flipped.
So they were all talking to the feds at that point?
Correct.
So that includes like John Finley, who was the husband at that point?
Yeah, well, not at that point. Not till it was, till when he was arrested, then everybody started coming in and spilling the beans.
Because they didn't want to get in trouble.
Yeah, so John Finley went there and testified, told the feds everything about Joe, all the money he received, all the cubs he dropped off, all the animals he hauled across the country. And then Eric did the same, and they just went down the line, and then everybody turned on Joe.
So you ended up, once they got Joe, you ended up testifying against him in the case, right? In court.
Correct, yes.
So what was that like? What was Joe Exotic like during that court case?
Well, he was sitting there doing the Joe, smiling and smirking at people and making weird eyes and, trying to intimidate people. And, I got on there, I did my thing, and then got off the stand. It was, it wasn't that big of a deal.
Did you know he was going to be found guilty? Like, was there plenty of evidence and you knew he was going to be found guilty?
Well, I know what he had to his defense. I mean, the only person that ever showed up in Joe's defense was one lawyer that works for PETA, People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals.
Wait a minute. So PETA testified on Joe's behalf?
Yes. Well, Joe was talking to PETA daily, trying to sell the park to PETA, trying to get PETA to tell Carol Baskin to back off and, all this stuff. So he was in contact with Brittany Pete, a PETA attorney, all the time. So while Joe was saying he hates PETA, he was actually talking to them all the time, trying to make a deal.
Wow. To the point where PETA testified on Joe Exotic's behalf. That's like total irony, right?
Yeah, not PETA. PETA's attorney.
PETA's
Brittany
attorney,
Pete.
right.
Yes.
So
that was his only defense, was her. So there was he had no defense. I mean, it was pretty ironclad because everybody, John Finley, he was there from day one, told him everything. And, there was a lot more things that they could have charged them all with. I thought they were going to indict them for about 60 or 80 counts. I didn't know it was just going to be like 21 or 22.
So the main count was what? Attempted murder?
Murder for hire, 2 counts.
Murder for hire. So how long is he scheduled to be in prison for?
I think he got 22 years.
22 years. Now, if you could say something to Joe Exotic right now, what would you say?
You pretty much got what you deserved. I mean, thinking about all those animals that he just shot in the ear. Yeah, I mean, I think I figured he'd got more time than that, but
So what are you doing now? What are you doing now with your life?
I'm actually in the jet ski business. I actually rent jet skis and things.
So you're down there. Are you in Marathon Key? Is that where you're based?
I'm down in South Florida. Yeah.
South Florida. Yeah. And is that, do you own the jet skis and stuff?
I have a piece of the business, yes.
Yeah.
I own it with my girlfriend, yes.
So are you aware of what a gigantic deal Tiger King, the Netflix show, has become?
Yeah, it's getting kind of crazy. I started, I was starting to do those cameo things. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
I do. Where you do like a message for somebody?
Yeah, I've been doing a lot of those, and it's good because, all the businesses are closed, so it's kind of getting us through the bad times. So it's, it's pretty much, a good thing.
How much through Cameo, how much does it cost for somebody to get you to do a message for them?
I think mine are $100.
And how many do you think you've done?
Oh, geez, maybe 50 or so.
That's not bad, man.
No, not bad at all, but it's weird because they always want me to ride the jet ski. I guess I don't know why people want to see a little fat guy ride a jet ski, but, it's everything's like this jet ski memes and stuff. I'm just kind of like, don't really know what to think. I was at Home Depot the other day scratching my nose and a picture showed up online. And it's just crazy. I mean, I wouldn't want to live that life of a celebrity or anything, that's for sure.
Do you have the same, do you still have the same haircut?
No, I got rid of it. I was looking, living the island life at the time, so I was looking pretty shabby. No, my hair looks normal now.
Okay, because the haircut was part of the appeal. The haircut was part of it.
Yeah, it was horrible, but I was just letting it grow out. I was fishing, playing in the water all day, and I just wanted to be like the island hippie. So, yeah, I mean, I didn't know it was going to be the talk of the nation about how bad it was, but it is what it is. I mean, I've seen it. It looked bad. I didn't even think I looked that bad, but yeah, I've lost a few pounds too. I have, I almost have a chin now, so everything's good.
Oh, that's great, man. That's great. Well, listen, it is fun talking to you. It is the whole show. Everybody is completely into it. I'll tell you this. This week on my radio show on ESPN, the president of the Los Angeles Dodgers was on, and the head coach of the Lakers was on, and both of them had watched Tiger King. Both of them had watched the show.
Crazy.
Yeah, it is crazy.
There's going to be more, I'm sure. There's a lot more stuff filmed, and, I think they're reaching out to people. There's going to be a lot more. But, I kind of want to throw this out there, too.
Yeah.
I understand that, the coronavirus and stuff, it's a very bad time for people. But what the message is, I really don't want people to look up to Joe because he's not somebody to look up to. I mean, the memes are fun, but let's just remember how many animals were affected by things he did.
Yeah.
That's the kind of message I want to send out there. And, I do get a lot of hate messages and a lot of threats and things like that.
What are the threats? What do you get hate messages for?
Oh, I've had a couple death threats already. Everybody's sending me the picture of a rat.
Why? Because they're thinking you snitched out Joe, and that's the thing.
Yeah. And the fact of the matter is, I didn't snitch out Joe. They were already on his trail. I didn't agree with the things he did to animals, and I thought I did the good deed, but I paid for it too. It's raining a lot of stress down on everybody in my family.
Do you still own any cats?
I do. I have a few. Yes, I do, and I have some camels and some things like that. I sure do.
Down in South Florida?
No, they're actually in Texas right now. I'm going to buy some land up in North Florida, and they're going to retire all there.
Oh, cool.
As long as this epidemic and all this stuff goes away with this coronavirus, and everybody gets back to business. If not, I guess everybody's going to be in bankruptcy court.
Yeah, everybody's going to have a hard time. Everybody's in a tough spot right now. Well, listen,
but yeah,
James, thank you very much for doing this. I appreciate it. I learned a lot more about the story, and it's good to pass it along to people.
Hey, thank you, Steve.
Thanks, James. All right, there you have it. James Garretson, who seems like actually one of the more normal people on that crazy show, right? I mean, seems kind of sane and did the right thing, I guess, to inform on Joe Exotic. Although, like he says, he's getting death threats and people think Joe Exotic shouldn't have gone to prison and all that kind of stuff. But comes off like a normal guy. So I am getting a kick out of doing these podcasts. And so we're going to do more of them. So do me a favor. Tell your friends, especially, this is a good one if they watch Tiger King. Tell your friends to check out the Culture Pop podcast. We are on Spotify and iTunes, and we're on SoundCloud and all those normal podcast places. So tell people to check it out. Some of the upcoming guests, actually the next guest that's coming up is John Finley, who is the husband of Joe Exotic. And he's got a story. He's the guy that had the messed up teeth. He's actually gotten new teeth since then. So I'll talk to him about that and about what it was like to be Joe Exotic's husband. Plus, coming up, Barry Sonnenfeld is going to join us, who is a legendary film director. He's done things like The Addams Family and Men in Black, and also Howard Koch Jr., who goes by Hawk Koch now. He's a Hollywood legend. In fact, was an assistant director on my all-time favorite movie, which is Chinatown. And we'll go inside the making of Chinatown, also talk about him and what it was like to grow up in his dad's shadow. His dad was actually the president of the Motion Picture Academy and is just a legendary figure in entertainment. So that's the kind of stuff we got coming up. Plus, we'll do more fun stuff. Thanks a lot for listening. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review, and I'll see you next time.
Be sure to subscribe, rate, and review. We'll see you next week for an all-new episode of Culture Pop.